I'm Kaylee, and today I'm going to tell you about some of my favorite books with peasants. I don't know why I got the idea to make a list of books featuring peasants, but that's what we're doing today. Creativity takes you down roads that just don't make sense sometimes, but this is what it is. Before we dive into some of my favorite books about peasants, we're gonna reach back here to our booktuber shout out book, and we're gonna shout out somebody randomly. Oops, I grabbed two. Well, I guess we're doing two. We're kind of stuck together. Okay, we're doing two today. Our first one is A Bibliophile's Journey, and our second one, Basically Brit. So be sure to look down in the description box and you'll see a link to both of their channels, and go over and subscribe to both of them. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe to this channel. If you love books with peasants, I guess, I don't know. Subscribe if you are a peasant, and like this video if you like peasants. I don't even know. Our first book with a peasant is The False Princess. Princess Nalia finds out on her 16th birthday that all her life she has been a decoy to protect the real princess who was hidden away. Nalia must now return to life in a peasant village with her aunt, her peasant aunt. However, she does not adjust well to village life after having lived in a castle. She finds her way back to the palace, searching for a way to learn more about the magic within her. I really love the character development that Nalia goes through as she learns that she is not a noble, she is in fact a peasant, and she kind of has to come to terms with that and find her own identity outside of being a princess. Our next one is actually a trilogy, the Shield, Sword, and Crown trilogy by Hilary Bell. Weasel is a street urchin, a peasant, and he's been given a job and educated as a clerk to a wealthy nobleman in the royal court. When his employer is arrested for treason, Weasel has to unravel the secrets and the intrigue surrounding the royal palace. He embarks on a quest to find three magical legendary objects: the shield, the sword, and the crown. I just love this trilogy. It's so interesting, so wild. You just never know what magical thing is gonna come up next. Our next one is Chalice by Robin McKinley. Marisol is a simple beekeeper on a woodland farm when she is magically chosen as the new Chalice, a prominent position in the royal court. She is responsible to use her new magic abilities to bind the court together in harmony. But it isn't easy when the priest of fire rises to take the throne. Marisol really has difficulty adjusting to the court manners and the whole customs of the court. But I loved the character development that she goes through and the amazing magical world building and the magic system that binds the court together and binds the whole land together. It's just so fabulous. Next, we have The Samurai's Tale. Taro's family are all killed by invading soldiers, but the captain saves young Taro alive to be a servant in the noble household. Taro vows to someday become a samurai and regain the wealthy position his father once held. He begins as a lowly kitchen boy. He gains the respect of men in power, and he slowly rises in the ranks to follow his dream. However, the shifting wars in Japan threaten to destroy everything he knows. This is such an interesting historical fiction. There are so many beautiful, rich, cultural things in there. It just really captures your attention. And it's so interesting to see how Taro changes as he grows up and how his dreams change and what he thinks is important and worth fighting for in life really changes. Then we have the Books of Bayern. The first book is The Goose Girl. Anidori Kiladra Tialana Ilisi is the crown princess of Kilindry, and she's traveling when she is attacked by bandits or spies, and she's left alone in a strange land. She spent her childhood learning the language of the birds, so now she becomes a goose girl as a servant to the royal court in this new land where she is a stranger. I just love the princess becomed peasant or peasant becomed princess type of trope. And of course, I love fairy tale retellings like The Goose Girl. In the the beginning, it seems like this is a simple fairy tale retelling, but as you go through the story, you get so much more depth and so much more world building. And then you get the whole entire series that follows other characters in this series as well. And this whole series is so amazing. It just takes you on this fantastic, magical adventure, and you get more character development and more depth and more world building the further you go. Then we have The Princess Academy by Shannon Hale. Miri lives on a mountain where for generations her ancestors have quarried the stone and lived a simple peasant life. Then word comes that the king's priests have divined that her small village is the home of the future princess. In a year's time, the prince himself will come and choose his bride from among the peasant girls of the village. The king's ministers set up an academy on the mountain, and every teenage girl must attend and learn how to become a princess. This is another one where it seems so simple on the surface, but the characters have so much depth. There are so many complex personalities, and the world building, not just of the magic, but the dynamics between people in this small village and how they make their living quarrying the stone. It's all just, I don't even have words to describe. It's phenomenal. It's just phenomenal. So many deep themes in this book. Our next one is The Book of Boy, another historical fiction. Boy has always been relegated to the outskirts of his small village. With a large hump on his back, a mysterious past, and a tendency to talk to animals, he is often mocked and abused by the other kids in his town, until the arrival of a shadowy pilgrim named Secundus, who hires the boy as his servant, pulling him into an expedition across Europe to gather the 7 precious relics of St. Peter. This is such a weird book. It's just weird. The plot is weird. The characters are weird. The setting is weird. It's this medieval, weird setting, but somehow it draws you in and just tugs at your heartstrings. And by the time you've gotten past like the first 30 pages, you are just hooked. The mystery and the adventure and the spiritual themes, because they're going on this spiritual journey to find relics of St. Peter, it's not just a physical journey or a quest, but it's also, just so many deep spiritual themes in this one. It's just so amazing. Then we have The Scarlet Pimpernell by Baroness Emuska Orczy. Armed with only his wits and his cunning, one nobleman recklessly defies the French revolutionaries and rescues scores of innocent men, women, and children and peasants from the deadly guillotine. His friends and foes know him only as the Scarlet Pimpernell. I love the entire Scarlet Pimpernell series. This series has some of the most clever plots that I have ever read in my entire life. Every single book in this series just blows me away. I never know what's going on until it's revealed at the end. And of course, there are a lot of nobles and peasants in the French Revolution, and lots of fiery, revolutionary, rebel passion, amazing adventures and spies and intrigue through this entire series. Then we have The Blanket of the Dark by John Buchan. This is a historical fiction set in the time of Cromwell. Peter Pentecost is a lowly clerk when he discovers his true heritage, and he must be groomed for a new life among the nobility. But he must keep his true identity a secret while he navigates the intrigues of Cromwell and Henry VIII in the royal court. It's been a few years since I read this one, but I remember the main thing that I really loved was just Peter's character development. I am definitely a character-driven reader. And I really loved the mystery and the intrigue and the way that Peter is just thrown outside of his comfort zone, outside of everything that he knows, and he has to learn how to navigate this whole new society. It has a lot of deep themes and like really serious subjects, but it's also just so interesting, so thoughtful. Our next one is The Children of the New Forest by Frederick Marryat. During the English Civil War, the 4 Beverley children are orphaned when their wealthy father is killed fighting for the restoration of King Charles. Their grand home is burnt down, and they are supposed to be dead. So they find shelter with a kindly old forester. They learn to hunt and harvest and care for their little cottage, living in seclusion as peasants, deep in the forest. I think the thing that I love so much about Children of the New Forest is just all the little day-to-day details of their lives. You know, they go and get the eggs from the chickens, and they go out hunting, and they figure out, how are we gonna have something to eat during the winter? And they weave cloth and make clothes for the winter, and just all these little things about how they manage their life. It's so detailed and so interesting. And of course there's adventure woven into that as well. There's something so charming about that type of story that just kind of describes how they lived. It sort of reminds me of like Robinson Crusoe, just how did they survive? Or even like Little House on the Prairie, like how did they keep the cottage clean and things like that. It's just very charming, and I don't know, there's just something so attractive to me about that sort of story. And our last one on this list is Far from the Madding Crowd by Thomas Hardy. I'm not really a Thomas Hardy fan, but I definitely love Far from the Madding Crowd. This classic tells the story of Bathsheba Everdeen, a young farm owner in rural England. And it tells the story of the three men who are in love with her. She has to make some difficult choices, some of which bring tragedy to her life, but she ultimately finds true love. It might be a little bit of a spoiler, but the reason that this is my favorite Thomas Hardy is because it's one of the few that has a happy ending. And I'm just that kind of person where I need a happy ending. This story is just all about peasants told from the peasant perspective. I think what I love so much about this story is just Bathsheba is just making it on her own, and she is making her own decisions, and she just does what she wants. And sometimes she makes mistakes and she makes bad decisions, but you know what? She handles the consequences of those decisions herself. Like she just handles things, you know? She's just so resilient and she's strong. I love it. And those are 11 of my favorite books featuring peasants. Please leave me a comment down below and let me know, what is one of your favorite books with peasants in them? Whether it's told from a noble person's perspective or a peasant's perspective or somewhere in between. And I sincerely hope that I have not offended any peasants. I have great respect for all peasants in the world. Technically, I guess I'm a peasant myself, so, you know, we can just all be peasants together. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and remember, the right book in the right hands at the right time can change the world.